Hello, I'm Richard Winfield. Welcome to this webinar, which is setting up a virtual board meeting. So we're from the Directors Academy, and the webinar, as I say, is called Setting Up a Virtual Board Meeting. I'm Richard Winfield. I'm the independent authority on director development. I'm an international trainer and facilitator specializing in corporate governance and executive coaching, and I am the founder of the Directors Academy and also the author of the New Directors Handbook series. People call me when they want to bring structure and clarity to their thinking because I can help you identify core issues and make complex ideas simple, holding the space for you to create your own solutions. So here is the text context of the video, general preparations for video meetings. I've got a specific presentation in a little while, but I thought I'd just start off by giving you a few things to think about before you actually start on your video meeting. So first thing is a microphone. Microphone is clearly the most important thing, because if people can't hear what you're saying clearly, then they won't be able to follow you. Ideally, the simplest thing is to wear a headset. The point is the headsets are not particularly comfortable or particularly attractive. So you might want to use a clip-on microphone on your lapel or tie, or you may be able to set up a directional microphone. If you're going to use a directional microphone, you need to make absolutely sure there's no feedback from the speakers. The camera, whether you're using a specific camera, a webcam, or whether you're using what part of your laptop machine, it's most appropriate to have it at eye level, because if you don't have it at eye level, you will appear to be looking down, and if it's high, you'll be looking up. So make sure that you can set the camera up at eye level. Lighting is important, and the most important thing is that you don't turn up as a silhouette with your face in shadow. So it is important that you get more light on the front of your face than on the back of your face. I do a lot of webinars and such like, and I have set up a mini studio in my office, and I have a spotlight to my, if you can see, to my top right, and then I have a soft light to the top left. So the soft light is lighting my face, and the spotlight is giving highlights to one side. And then actually I have another soft light behind me focusing on the wall. So the background, coming onto the background, behind me, as you will see in this case, I have a green screen. If you're using Zoom, if you have a solid color, which might be white or gray, or you have a green screen, then you do have the facility to put up a slide behind you so that you can appear to be in a very smart office. And if you see me on a Zoom, you will find that I have a library behind me. It is my library. It is a genuine library, but it doesn't happen normally to be behind me. Or you could have a sea scene, or you could have a city scene or an office scene. The key to remember is that if you're working from home, which is increasingly common these days, you may well have a very domestic context, and that's not really what you should be putting forward when you're having public meetings. So having finding yourself a plain screen, or the screen I've got, the green screen, is a roll-up screen. So it scrolls down or it scrolls up, and I can carry it around room to room. If you're going to do a significant number of Zoom or webinar presentations, it's worth investing in. I got mine off Amazon. It cost me £150. It's a really good investment. Next, mute. Now, if you're using Zoom, then whoever speaks will automatically become the priority in terms of the screen. The trouble is, if you're not the person speaking, there could well be background noise, or you might even be muttering to yourself or whatever. And particularly if you've got more than, say, 4 people, the dangers of that become significant. So it may well be your decision as a team that those who are not speaking or perhaps who are not directly involved in this particular conversation, should put their computer onto mute. That will just save this sort of interruptions and backgrounds. Similarly, of course, you need to make sure that there isn't any background noise, preferably no dogs scrapping around or children arguing. Those are the sorts of things you wouldn't need to think about if you were doing a face-to-face meeting in a boardroom, but nonetheless are significant. And also, if you wish, and this is for the organizer, if you wish to record, then make sure that you set it up to record, and then you have a record of what's been said. If you are recording it, then really you need to make it clear to the participants that it's being recorded, because they might be concerned about that, and they need to know where any recording might or might not end up. So let's get on to this checklist. This checklist was prepared by Richard Sheath from independentaudit.com, and I'm very pleased to have been given his permission to use it, because it's an excellent checklist, no point reinventing the wheel here. And there are a number of sections. So the first thing he asks you to think about is preparing the meeting. Does the agenda, and this really should apply to any board meeting, does the agenda cover only essential items which must be discussed face to face? So don't fill your agenda up with lots of clutter. If things can be dealt with elsewhere, they can be dealt with by an email or by a phone conversation outside the board meeting, then that's better than cluttering up in the board meeting. Are the pre-read papers clear on what is being asked of the board? And one of the things I teach in terms of setting up an agenda is that the agenda should give an indication of what the outcome will be, because some things don't need a specific outcome. Sometimes the objective of an agenda item is to have a general discussion. Sometimes it is to make a decision, and sometimes it is to refer on or say to come back later. So it's quite important in any board meeting, but you need to be more efficient, I think, when you're working online, is to make quite sure that people know what is the purpose and what they should be looking for when they read the board papers. Will a virtual meeting meet legal quorum and location requirements? This is a very interesting question, isn't it? Because I think it's extremely unlikely that your rules and regulations, what do you call them? Never mind. Would actually have thought about non-physical meetings. So your articles and do your articles allow you to do this? It's quite likely that they're silent, but it may well be that they say you must physically be there, in which case you need a board resolution to overcome that. Next, preparing the technology. Have you tested the technology in advance? So don't turn up on the dot. Make sure that you allow yourself time to make sure that your camera and your microphone are working, and that the microphone and the loudspeakers are not interacting. Will the meeting function when all participants have video switched on? So again, if you've got a large meeting, it's probably not going to be easy to run, and maybe you should limit the number of people at any one stage, say to 4 or maybe 6 people. So it's just something to think about, is in a larger meeting, what's the best way to run it? Do you require a document sharing facility? More and more these days, people are using electronic and online board packs, but the situation might be slightly different here. And of course, there will be the opportunity to use the whiteboard. So again, to think about, is there any information that you need during the meeting for discussion that needs a special form of presentation? Have you set up the meeting so that it will be secure and only accessible to invited participants? So there are two sides. There's firstly what I mentioned earlier about what will happen if there's a recording. But secondly, if you are in a closed boardroom, the only interaction you might have with outside is if somebody comes in to serve the tea or provide the biscuits or sandwiches. When you're working from wherever, and potentially particularly from home, anybody else might be able to come into the meeting and listen. So do think and warn your board members that to make sure that the door is closed, and if there's somebody else in the house, they're not able to listen in or interrupt. Next, preparing the participants. Have all participants been asked to use headphones? I mentioned this earlier. I don't like using headphones, and normally I'm able to set up so that my microphone doesn't interfere with the loudspeakers. The safest thing to do, though, is to have a headset of some form. Do all participants have access to a well-lit, quiet, secure space with adequate Wi-Fi connection? So apart from the Wi-Fi connection, I think we've covered those things so far. Clearly, you need to have sufficient Wi-Fi. But I found even with Zoom meetings in Africa, they've run particularly well. So increasingly, that should not be a problem, but it's worth checking. At the beginning of the meeting, how do you start? Have you asked participants to arrive early to get comfortable with the virtual environment? So I mentioned that the participants should arrive early enough to check their equipment, but also just to settle into the meeting as you would if you were meeting in the flesh. Has the chair been prompted to take a roll call to record attendees and to ensure all participants know who is present? So you would normally take a note, presumably the company secretary would take a note of who's there. In this case, you need to be more specific about it so that each participant knows who else is there, and there is a proper means of actually recording their attendance. Has the company secretary prepared to run through virtual meeting etiquette? Has the company secretary thought through, and does the company secretary have if you say, an item at the beginning of the agenda just to explain or remind people of what the approved etiquette is? And the etiquette is particularly going to be to do the things like interrupting and sending signals and so on. Communicating virtually. Have all participants been prompted to mute their microphones when not speaking? Again, I've raised this earlier, and it becomes increasingly important with larger numbers of people. Are all participants aware of an agreed system for intervening in discussion, such as thumbs up, hands up, questions in chat box? So these will be technical things which are available on your particular system of operation, and they should have been covered by the company secretary when talking about etiquette, because you will need to know how to run these things. Is it clear how voting will be conducted? Because voting is going to be minuted, and therefore it's quite important that it's clearly understood and done. Is the chair primed to call on individual directors for their input? Standard practice, I guess. But again, I think it's something you need to focus on more, because when somebody's not physically in the room, it's less likely that you'll be able to pick up on body language or lack of body language and make sure everybody is properly involved. Breaks. If you have a board meeting and it goes on, you will have breaks. So the same applies when you're working online. And in fact, I think the feedback generally is that working online is more tiring than working in face-to-face. So breaks are important. So are all participants aware of the need to turn off their camera and microphone if they need to be interrupted? So this is a slightly different case. Sometimes it will be necessary, though not desirable, for somebody to leave the meeting for a little while. They should make sure they effectively close down their communication. Now, keep it open, but turn off the camera and the microphone so that no undesirable things can come in. And our comfort breaks scheduled as they would be for an in-person meeting. And have you set up virtual breakout rooms so directors may interact socially during breaks? It's an interesting, I'd not come across this concept before, but when you're having a break at a normal meeting, you would probably have a break over coffee, say, and you'd be chatting to each other. So how can you simulate the same sort of social interaction, which is particularly important if you've had, say, quarterly board meetings, because people do need time to catch up and invest in their relationships. So that's the presentation. And I am Richard Winfield from the Directors Academy, and you can find out about all our training and online services at www.thedirectorsacademy.com. And so here we are, Richard Winfield, back again just to say thank you very much for watching. I look forward to meeting you on my next webinar, and I hope you find these useful. Whatever, please do take the trouble to get in touch with me and tell me any feedback or any suggestions, or in particular, any requests. So very enjoyable to see you, and look forward to next time. Goodbye.